Earlier this April, Nintendo made quite a few waves when it announced the next portable offering from Japan. Faster, smarter, and better than the original Switch in every way, except for one: pricing. The new Switch will cost significantly more than the old one, but here's the thing. It will also be packing a larger display with superior resolution and some good old NVIDIA DLSS upscaling technology to run those more demanding third-party AAA titles. So, what kinds of games should you be looking forward to? If, like most people watching this channel, you haven't been living under a rock, you probably have a decent idea of what to expect. However, I'm here to filter out the shovelware and give you my thoughts on which games are the must-plays on day one. You simply can't miss these, because these are the top 15 Switch 2 games, bar none. Mario Kart World. Starting things off at the top, we've got Mario Kart World, the first new mainline game in the series since Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which was released all the way back in 2017 for the original Switch. And even that was just a revamped version of Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U. However, Mario Kart World is the next evolutionary step for this legendary racing series, and it promises to bring some pretty interesting improvements to both the social aspect of Mario Kart as well as the skill-based nature of this game. Mario Kart World is going to be big, in more ways than one. For starters, there are a whole bunch of new characters, at least 50 confirmed so far. We've got returning faces like Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, and Yoshi, but also new drivers like Goomba, Spike, and Cow? Yeah, I read that right, Cow. Come a long way since Moo Moo Meadows, I see. Anyway, each of these drivers will have their own unique stats for weight, acceleration, and handling. You'll have to synergize character stats with vehicle class and model to get the best results in each race. And that's just part of the fun in Mario Kart World, choosing the right driver and vehicle combo for each course. What's super interesting is that unlike previous Mario Kart games, you won't just load into a new race. You can actually drive there, because Mario Kart World, like the name implies, is based on one giant interconnected open world. It's basically Forza Horizon, but with Mario characters. You can even free roam and go off-road in this game, something that has never been done before in any other first-party Nintendo racing game. Also, there are cool new tricks you can pull off, like rail grinding and wall riding. I love how rails are so well integrated into each of these courses. It feels natural and gives you a stylish way to blow past your rivals if you've got the skills. Wall riding is also something new and gives you the ability to dodge some of the pesky new items that they've added to Mario Kart World. Like, we've got the old classics such as Koopa Shell and Banana Peel, a strategic application of which is guaranteed to make your friends rage quit. But also, we've got a few fancy additions that have never been seen before. Take the feather, for example. It's kinda like a dodge button where if you use it, your character will jump in the air and avoid any incoming projectiles or obstacles. Then there's also the hammer, which is a new throwable that flies out into a giant arc. If you bonk someone on the head, they'll spin out. But even if you don't hit a racer directly, you can still block their path for a fraction of a second, turning a losing position into a winning one, because hammers dig into the ground and stay there for a long time before disappearing. Overall, Mario Kart World has pretty sweet new mechanics going on and supports up to 24 players, both online and locally, more than any other previous Mario Kart game. The tracks are bigger, more interesting, and packed full of opportunities to pull off cool stunts. There are also new terrain features and a day-night cycle that completely changes how you view each track and turns previously familiar spots into potential death traps if you can't see what's ahead. I'm really looking forward to playing this game, and it's gonna be the launch title for the Switch too. Let me know what you guys think. Was Mario Kart World worth waiting 8 years for? Because I think it's pretty awesome what they've done with the newer and more powerful hardware of the Switch 2. Going open worlds and making each part of the continent have its own biome and weather effects is ingenious. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, Switch 2 Edition. Next up is a familiar face, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. But this time, it's got a few enhancements over the OG to take advantage of Nintendo's latest hardware. On the surface, it may not seem like much, but the Switch 2 edition of the game features improved frame rates and higher resolution, so we'll probably get 1080p 60 FPS even in handheld mode. And with your Switch 2 docked, you should be getting 1440p or even 4K resolution thanks to Nvidia's DLSS upscaling. And the good news doesn't stop there. The world in Breath of the Wild is absolutely massive, so you'll be relieved to know that loading times between zones have been shrunk down massively. With Switch 2, the game loads over twice as fast, and you now have 2 manual save slots, so you can continue your old journey or start a brand new adventure. Also, there's a new feature called Zelda Notes, which is accessible when you have the Nintendo Switch app installed. And its purpose is to help you understand the world of Hyrule so you can navigate it more easily.
Your destination is north of here and close.
And you can also listen to voiced commentaries from different characters as you visit new locations.
My study. I found a silent princess in a corner of this desolate room.
Zelda Notes also has an online item and build sharing, along with a photo studio where you can edit in-game screenshots and frame them for others to see. Nintendo has also added a global play data comparison, so you can compare your stats to that of other players, and there's also a daily login bonus that gives you a random effect or item just for using Zelda Notes. So, while it isn't exactly revolutionary, and there are no new mechanics or areas to explore, if this is your first time playing Breath of the Wild, you're going to have a much smoother and prettier experience than everyone who played it on the OG Switch. But is it worth paying the full price for? That's for you to decide. Yakuza 0, Director's Cut. And now, it's time for one of my personal favorites, Yakuza 0. If you aren't familiar with the Yakuza series, these are Japanese crime drama games featuring, well, the Yakuza. You know, it's in the name. Yeah, Sega has rebranded it to Like a Dragon to be consistent with their Japanese versions of the game, but the content has remained the same. Heavily story-driven, action-packed RPGs where you go through an emotional roller coaster. You're solving grand conspiracies involving the criminal underworld and also exploring the streets of Japan's red light districts, smashing in skulls with conveniently placed billboards and bicycles along the way. At its core, Yakuza is a brawler with RPG progression mechanics. Or at least it used to be, before the series pulled a hard left with the new turn-based RPG mechanics. Yakuza 0 is the best example of Yakuza's old-school brawler charm, distilled down to its essence. It has, in my opinion, the best plot of any Yakuza game, ditching the grand conspiracy stuff for an intertwined story of 2 individuals, Majima and Kiryu, as they find themselves trapped in a struggle for power. The gameplay is a classic beat-em-up, with a relatively basic but satisfying combo system that lets you duck, weave, dodge, and roll around your enemies in style, as you beat the ever-living daylight out of them. You can also switch between 3 different fighting styles for each of the 2 characters, and if you complete certain side quests, you even unlock a hidden 4th fighting style. Each style is unique, with different heat actions and strengths. Brawler is your default for Kiryu. It offers a nice balance of speed and striking power, and also has a wide range of both defensive and offensive heat actions. The style Rush is all about evasion and striking your opponents with a flurry of kicks and punches before they even get the chance to react. And it's perfect for 1v1 boss fights. Beast lets you pump out an insane amount of damage using environmental objects, and it has a ton of grabs and throws that let you ragdoll your enemies around the arena. And those were just Kiryu's fighting styles. Majima has his own styles: Thug, Breaker, and Slugger. In addition to beating up people and taking their money, the game's world is full of detail. The maps may be small compared to something like GTA or Watch Dogs, but you can't go around a corner or go across the street without running into some random event or NPC. Every street has some kind of story going on, and there are lots of mini-games that are so incredibly crafted that you might even forget the main questline entirely and spend hours on these instead. And I know this from personal experience because I spent the better part of 2 days playing Pocket Circuit and Cabaret Club Management. It's really addicting. So if you're itching for an old-fashioned beat-em-up game with an incredible character-driven story and enough minigames to make your head spin, buy Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. It's an experience you will remember for the rest of your life. And it has 26 additional minutes of cutscenes compared to the regular version. Exclusive for now to the Switch 2. Oh, there's also a new Red Light Raid online multiplayer mode that lets you team up with friends and select 1 out of 60 playable fighters to fight off waves of enemies. It's pretty fun. Donkey Kong Bananza. Donkey Kong Bananza is the next big release in the legendary Donkey Kong franchise, and we haven't had one of these since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which came out for the Wii U all the way back in 2014, and then later on the Switch in 2018. If you've played that game, you know it's a 2.5D side-scroller that stays true to the classic Donkey Kong formula. However, Donkey Kong Bananza is a landmark moment for the series, and I guess you could call it the Super Mario 64 of Donkey Kong games because this time we're going full 3D, and with movement in all three axes, we are no longer restricted to a linear side-scroller window. This right here is a proper 3D platformer with an emphasis on exploration and destruction. And when I say destruction, I mean it. Because if you watch the Nintendo Direct gameplay reveal, you'll realize that Bananza plays very differently from every other 3D platformer out there. Here, the platforms aren't meant to be obstacles. Instead, they are targets for your pure, unbridled monkey rage. Watch Donkey Kong finally lose it as he chugs 5 gallons of Monster Energy and rearranges the local mountain range with his fists. And you thought Ezio from Assassin's Creed knows parkour? Well, in Donkey Kong Bananza, not only can Donkey Kong out-parkour Ezio by literally climbing up the face of an 100-meter tall cliff in a matter of seconds, but he can also burrow through solid bedrock underground and search for his hidden treasures, like a roided-up coal miner. There is nothing that this version of Donkey Kong can't smash, flatten, or obliterate down to atoms with his mighty fists. He can even pick up giant objects and toss them into other objects around like a catapult. And doing this opens up brand new pathways for exploration. And since this is a platformer, you'll obviously get a bunch of collectibles hidden in secret areas, puzzles you can solve for various rewards, and plenty of boss fights throughout the course of the game to keep things entertaining. In terms of physics, graphical fidelity, and sheer intensity of gameplay and presentation, I have yet to see a first-party Nintendo title that beats Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I'm sure it's one of the most anticipated Switch 2 titles right now. So keep your eyes peeled for July this year when the game finally releases. Kirby Air Riders. Kirby Air Riders is the culmination of over 20 years of design and development, and it's the brainchild of none other than Masahiro Sakurai, the father of both Kirby and Super Smash Bros. The first Kirby Air Rider game was released on the GameCube in 2003, and it was Sakurai's last Kirby game due to his departure from HAL Laboratory later that year. Back then, Air Ride made a mark on the industry by being one of the only racers to require no input for forward movement. Instead, you'd use the control stick for steering and press A or left and right buttons to either boost, brake, or inhale your enemy. This simplified control scheme, combined with goal-oriented racing, where you explore the track to unlock pieces of content including characters, machines, and music tracks, is what made the OG so popular. And it amassed quite the cult following in the preceding decades before Sakurai announced a top-secret game via his YouTube channel. And it was the last video to be uploaded in his Creating Games series. Today, we finally know what he's been working on this entire time, a sequel to Kirby Air Ride, and it's going to be called Kirby Air Riders. We know very little about the actual gameplay, but you can bet it'll be nothing like any other racer on the market. The OG Air Ride had some pretty interesting game modes, including a battle royale, and in fact, it was one of the earliest games to ever include that mechanic. There's absolutely no telling what new magic Sakurai has been cooking up these past few years, and we don't even have an official release date yet, other than the knowledge it'll be released sometime in 2025. So, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment is the next entry in the Hyrule Warriors series, and a sequel to the Age of Calamity, which told the tale of how Hyrule fell against the Calamity Ganon 100 years before Breath of the Wild. But in this game, we're going way back to the Imprisonment War, which took place shortly after the founding of Hyrule and its lead up to Tears of the Kingdom. You can think of it as the prequel to Tears of the Kingdom, and while Age of Calamity pulled the old alternate reality trick to show a whole new story without lasting consequences in the future, Nintendo has all but confirmed the Age of Imprisonment will be canonical to the main storyline. So I guess Zelda lore bros will be eating good this year, because we're about to learn so much more about the history of Hyrule, Ganondorf's relationship with Gerudo, the first king of Rauru, and Queen Sonia. Gameplay will be the standard hack-and-slash formula that we're used to by now with Hyrule Warriors, but with some cool new abilities, as we can see in a playable Rauru in the reveal trailer. So if you're looking forward to more Zelda content, Age of Imprisonment is coming out late this year, probably Q4. So keep an eye out for the gameplay trailer, and I'm probably going to make a video covering it once it releases, so don't forget to subscribe. The Duskbloods. It is a brand new Soulsborne game, crafted by Hidetaka Miyazaki as a Switch 2 exclusive that's going to be released sometime in 2026. Much like Elden Ring prior to its release, the hype train is already underway, with no shortage of speculation as to what the new universe entails and whether or not it's connected to Bloodborne. Many folks are already calling it Bloodborne's weird cousin, and I've got to agree. It does look like it's got this mix of a gothic art style from Bloodborne, along with some wonky steampunk elements like jetpacks and machine guns. However, it's safe to say that based on the characters and events we see in the trailer, the world of Duskbloods is gonna be different from Yharnam, and it's not going to feature any returning characters from Bloodborne. Miyazaki probably wanted to create something with the aesthetic appeal and combat flow of Bloodborne, but since Sony is sitting on those IP rights, absolutely refusing to take it multi-platform or even release a remaster, Miyazaki has resorted to more creative ways of sharing the joy with players on other platforms. The art design looks absolutely gorgeous, and since it's going to take advantage of the Switch 2's more powerful hardware, I'm guessing this will be a smooth 60 FPS experience. Even in handheld mode, we can see all sorts of cool spells and weapons, including a gravity spell used in the trailer and a transformation ability that turns one of the characters into a T-Rex. According to an interview with Miyazaki, the playable characters in the game are called Bloodsworn, and they're a special group whose members have achieved supernatural powers by consuming blood. Like vampires, but they use their powers for good instead of being mindless monsters. And I think that there even might be a lifesteal mechanic based on this vampiric nature, because we see one of the characters sucking the essence out of an enemy in the trailer. So maybe the game rewards a fast-paced, high-risk, high-reward playstyle where you go in aggressively and try to chain together kills. You know, compensating for damage taken with blood that heals you. Just guessing here. But in terms of commercial success, none of this matters, because it's the new Soulsborne from Miyazaki and it's going to sell like hotcakes regardless, whenever the game comes out next year. And based on the legacy of FromSoft's recent releases over the past decade, I have no issues putting Duskbloods on my top 15 list. Metroid Prime 4, Beyond. It's always good to hear about a new Metroid Prime game, and we've been waiting a while for the next numbered entry in the series since Metroid Prime 3, which released all the way back in 2007 for the Wii. Metroid Prime 4 was originally announced as a Switch title back in 2017, and it didn't have the Beyond suffix back then. Bandai Namco were the OG devs, before they got swapped out in 2019 for Retro Studios, who took the development for Metroid Prime 4 in a different direction, one that aligns more with Nintendo's vision. And I'm assuming here that Retro Studios began from scratch, because the Nintendo GM said in 2019 that the last project under Bandai Namco didn't meet their standards, which is probably why it took so long for Metroid 4 to get to a playable state. In the trailer, we see that Samus is trapped on an alien planet called Vuros, where she must scan ancient relics and statues to forge a path forward and escape the planet. It's infested with all sorts of dangerous creatures, and gameplay is similar to the first-person action-adventure style that we've seen in previous Metroid titles. However, this time, Samus has access to certain special abilities called psychic powers. Among other things, these psychic powers allow her to move objects and solve puzzles through telekinesis, and she can even use her psychic abilities to curve the energy beam coming out of her cannon. This is going to be insane, because you can curve your shots and guide them through multiple enemies, some of whom may be hiding behind cover. This game will be available on both Switch and Switch 2, but you'll definitely want the Switch 2 version, which is superior not just because of the mouse controls with the new Joy-Cons, but also the upgraded resolution, which goes up to 4K at 60 FPS or 1080p at 120 FPS. And yes, the Switch 2 has a high refresh rate display with VRR and HDR support, so you can enjoy Metroid Prime 4 at 120 FPS on the go. Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition. When Cyberpunk 2077 was first announced in 2013, I was still in college, and when the game was finally released in 2020, well, let's just say a lot had happened in my life by then. Many people who were students back in the 2010s when this game was announced now had families. And, you know, despite all the hype, all the Keanu memes, and all the pre-orders, Cyberpunk 2077 was a buggy, unfinished mess on release. Everyone remembers the videos of missing textures, vanishing NPCs, T-posing characters, and cars that would jettison themselves into low Earth orbit after jumping a curb. The game was all but unplayable on the base PS4 and Xbox One, and even on next-gen consoles, it had issues. But as you guys know, CDPR put in some serious overtime and fixed most of the issues with the game through an endless barrage of patches, DLCs, and updates, to the point where the game was basically unrecognizable compared to the release date. And we got a nice little anime out of it, so all's forgiven. But never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined this behemoth of an open-world game coming to a portable console like the Switch. Switch 2 to be specific, but it's still a monumental achievement because we're talking about a map that's similar in size to Los Santos from GTA 5, with a much higher level of detail in lighting, textures, and geometry. And Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition, when it releases on the Switch 2, will include all DLCs, and you'll get the full game on the cartridge. None of that download key nonsense. Split Fiction. Split Fiction comes from Hazelight Studios, the same guys who made It Takes Two. And just like its predecessor, Split Fiction is a multiplayer co-op game with a focus on emergent storytelling. It's also one of the few good things to come out of EA in the last 5 years. So I'm offering it a spot on this list, really because it exceeded everyone's expectations. In Split Fiction, you and a friend play as authors Zoe and Mio, both of whom are trapped inside the fictional worlds of their own making when they get connected to a machine that's designed to steal ideas from writers. And this is a split-screen co-op game, so you and your partner must work together in each fictional world to complete various challenges so you can escape. Mio's world has a sci-fi setting, while Zoe has a high fantasy universe similar to Zelda. Side stories are based on unfinished ideas written by both authors, and every stage has a one-off game mechanic that's unique to that level. Abilities change as you move from one stage to the next, so you must synergize with the other player to solve all puzzles. I think Split Fiction is an excellent concept that's executed well, and it's perfectly suited for the sort of casual co-op gaming that the Switch 2 encourages.
You have unpaid parking tickets. Time to die.
Excuse me? Run!
Hades 2. Hades 2 is the successor of the highly successful Hades, an indie roguelike game from Supergiant Games, and it is currently in early access on Steam, but will get a full release alongside the console versions for Switch and Switch 2. In Hades 2, you'll play as Melanie, Zagreus' sister and princess of the underworld, based on Greek mythology. In the original Hades, you play as an estranged son trying to escape the clutches of his own father to meet up with his biological mother who lives on the surface. In Hades 2, Melanie is fighting to defeat Kronos, the Titan of Time, who has imprisoned her family and has come to enact his revenge on all mortals as well as gods who fought against him in the Great War between gods and titans. Melanie is tutored by Hecate in the art of fighting, and she has access to a new mechanic called Magic Bar, which is a special meter that recharges over time and gives her access to powerful finishers. Hades 2 also introduces a second path. You can go from Erebus to Tartarus, or from Etheria to Mount Olympus, and both paths have 4 different biomes, each packed with unique environmental challenges and enemy types. Just like the OG, Hades 2 is a roguelite, so you lose all your progress once you die, but you retain certain perks and bonuses. You can also unlock new weapons by defeating enemies and completing challenges, and these weapons completely change how you approach each room. The expressive art style, free-flowing combat, and simple but well-executed story make for an exciting procedurally generated adventure that you can play again and again on your Switch 2 for months on end. Because no 2 runs of Hades 2 will ever be the same. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, Switch 2 Edition. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom is getting a Switch 2 upgrade, and it'll be very similar to how the upgrade was done for Breath of the Wild. So there isn't much to talk about here. You already know what you're going to get. This is just Tears of the Kingdom with an upgraded performance patch, so higher resolution and better frame rates. It'll also get HDR support, so you're going to see better colors and lighting. And just like Breath of the Wild, the Switch 2 version supports Zelda notes, which again is for easier navigation and voiced memories that you don't have in the OG. The Switch 2 version of Tears of the Kingdom will also come with 2 manual save slots and significantly faster loading times. But if you already own the game on the original Switch, you may want to consider if you actually want to pay full price for the same thing on a new console. Then again, it's supposed to look and perform better, so if you're a big Zelda fan, the upgrade might be worth it for you when you buy your Switch 2, because this will definitely be the way to experience Tears of the Kingdom going forward. Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. Elden Ring is one of my favorite games of all time, and without a doubt, the most visually stunning piece of interactive media that I've played in the last 5 years. But this game is known for chugging even on decent gaming PCs. And you definitely don't want frame skips while fighting Leonine Misbegotten's 17th cousin in a ditch full of poisonous swamp water. So I'm wondering how well the Tarnished Edition will run on Switch 2. If they stick with 1080p upscaled, the game should be able to hit 60 FPS for most of the time. But I guess that remains to be seen once the reviews drop. We don't yet know when the game will be released, but it's going to be later this year, and it will include the Shadow of Erdtree DLC, along with new armor and customization features for Torrent. If you like Soulsborne games but haven't yet played Elden Ring, well, you'll be part of an exceedingly rare breed, and I suggest you rectify your mistake immediately because you're missing out on something seriously awesome. For those of you who have played Elden Ring and would like a handheld version of it, the Switch 2 Tarnished Edition might be exactly what you're looking for. One thing is for sure, it will run better than it does on Steam Deck. Street Fighter VI. The latest installment of the iconic Street Fighter franchise, Street Fighter VI is finally coming to Switch, and the Fighters Edition includes all characters and stages from both Year 1 and 2. The gameplay and mechanics are standard Street Fighter VI, as seen on PC and console, but we're also getting some exclusive Switch 2 game modes. First is Gyro Battle. These are 1v1 matches where you use your motion sensors on your Joy-Con to attack and move. Twisting your controller unleashes the super art, tilting moves your character, and shaking makes your fighter attack. The second Switch 2 exclusive game mode is Calorie Contest, where you compete to see who can burn the most calories while controlling your characters with motion controls. There are a total of 20 stages, including 16 base stages and the 4 additional stages from Year 1 and 2. Street Fighter VI on Switch is a revolution because you can now enjoy some good old fighting action anytime, anywhere, and against anyone, with motion controls. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, that's a mouthful, is finally coming to Switch 2, and the timing couldn't be any better as we're likely in the near future to get the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth port too. But if you have yet to play the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because you're a Nintendo gamer, now is your chance. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't just remaster the visuals of the OG, it completely revamps the gameplay, and even reimagines some of the characters and plot points. Think of it like an alternative universe of Final Fantasy VII, where 95% of it matches up with the original, which was released for the PS1. But Square Enix have tweaked that remaining 5% for a more memorable and interesting experience. The combat is hybrid between real-time hack and slash and turn-based strategy, where you can give commands to your teammates and slow down time to think a few steps ahead. Visuals are stunning, and since this is the Intergrade version, you'll actually get Episode Intermission, which is a series of events featuring Yuffie as the playable character. Overall, this is a game I'd highly recommend, both to longtime Final Fantasy fans and Switch gamers who have never played a Final Fantasy game before. Final Fantasy VII is one of the founding fathers of modern JRPG design, and you can't afford to miss out on this remake if you're a fan of JRPGs. And there you have it, guys. My top 15 Switch 2 games that you must play if you want the definitive Switch 2 gaming experience. Some of these are launch titles, while others will release later this year or even next year, but one thing is for sure, you don't want to miss out on the action when these games drop. Getting the likes of Elden Ring and Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2 is something I never thought would be possible. But thanks to the amazing work put in by the developers, we can now play these massive open-world games on a console that is small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. And it will be at 1080p 60 FPS, so no compromises on visuals here. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you found this video entertaining. It really helps the channel. And I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now!